Crude prices cutting some of their losses overnight, bouncing back from a loss of around 9% earlier in the session after the CEO of Russia's RDIF, a sovereign wealth fund, told CNBC that Moscow and Saudi Arabia were, in his words, very close to an oil deal. Joining us to talk about what could be coming, Helima Croft, RBC Capital Markets Managing Director, Global Head of Commodity Strategy, a CNBC contributor. So, Helima, what would this deal look like, and what is the probability? Would it be 10 million barrels a day? Does it? Do we need the United States to kick in, and will it be happening this week? Is it in everybody's best interest, or just too much bad blood between Russia and the Saudis?
I think it's going to be very hard to get to 10 million barrels a day without some U.S. contribution. With the Russians and Saudis and the rest of OPEC Plus, you could probably get 6 million. Hence why you have an effort to get not just the U.S., but Norway, Brazil, Canada, all on board for an agreement. But it's still going to be really challenging. I mean, there was a spat over the weekend between Saudi Arabia and Russia over who was targeting shale. There are issues about, do U.S. producers even want to contribute? Can they contribute because of U.S. antitrust laws? So it's still going to be really challenging to get this done on Thursday. You should know that the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev, he does have very good relations with Saudi Arabia. He's been sort of running the back channel between these two countries. But again, it's going to be really tough to get this done on Thursday.
Is there enough motivation in terms of stabilizing the price to where the revenue of Russia would, where you'd make up for the revenue you lost because of such low prices with, maybe higher prices, but you'd be cutting back on production. Is that going to motivate? Because no one's going to do anything that it's against their own self-interest. Or does Russia really want to strike a dagger in the heart of our producers here?
I think from the Russian perspective, they have a lower fiscal break even than many of the OPEC producers. But I think what they're looking for is obviously a higher price, but they don't want to do this alone. They're tired of bearing the burden of adjustment. They keep saying the high-cost producers, the U.S. should sit down some barrels. So I think what they're looking for is not just a U.S. contribution, but relief from sanctions. Russian energy companies have been sanctioned aggressively since 2014, and they're looking for some relief on those sanctions. So the question is, can we give the Russians enough to get them across the finish line?
And how about the Saudis?
The Saudis absolutely need higher oil prices. They have a fiscal break even of around $80 plus. They can borrow. It's more challenging for the Russians to borrow because they're under sanctions. But I think from the Saudi perspective, they're very clear. They're not going to do it unless the Russians are there. So you have to get the Russians on board for the Saudis. And again, the Russians want some U.S. participation and they want some sanctions relief. But now everybody in OPEC is saying the challenge is so big because of the demand problems, we need almost every producer there. Hence why they're going again to Norway, to Canada, to Brazil, to try to get everybody on board for some type of production cut agreement.
All right. And is it in the price already, some type of agreement, or do we go back into the 30s, do you think?
Last week we had this amazing move anticipating an agreement. Again, 10 to 15 million barrels is going to be incredibly challenging to get that number done. If we don't get an agreement on Thursday, and then if the Saudis once again slash their official selling prices, we could be talking about being back in the teens pretty soon.